A service full of laughter, tears, prayer, and praise at the Washington National Cathedral today, marking the official state funeral for former President George H.W. Bush.
That's right. Every living president came together on what's been officially declared a national day of mourning. White House correspondent Ben Kennedy has more.
From the Capitol Hill steps to the halls of the National Cathedral and beyond.
I believe in God, the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth.
The country honored the nation's 41st president, George Herbert Walker Bush. George W. Bush delivered the eulogy for his father, the last person he spoke to before passing away.
I said, "Dad, I love you and you've been a wonderful father." And the last words he would ever say on earth were, "I love you too."
Seated in the front row alongside the Bush family was President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump, along with former Presidents Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, and Jimmy Carter. Christian recording artist Michael W. Smith, a longtime friend of the Bush family, sang Friends.
Though it's hard to let you go, in the Father's hands we know.
It means something because I've been friends with him for 29 years. And so the fact that he wanted me to sing at his funeral, it's just an honor beyond words, it really is.
Smith recalled seeing President Bush a mere months before he passed away.
As we were leaving, we just gave him a hug and said, "Hey, we love you. We love you. Thanks. It's so good to see you." And then, about the time we were back, he kind of get his little finger in the air and he had that little sparkle in his eye. He said, "Friends are friends forever." That's what he said. That's the last thing he said to us.
And now you're singing Friends.
It's crazy. And Deb and I walked out of there thinking, you know what? That might be the last time that we see him.
Reverend Dr. Russell Levinson was with the former president in his final days and shared a moment he witnessed between Bush and his former Secretary of State James Baker, a man he called his little brother.
Secretary Baker was at the foot of the president's bed, and toward the end, Jim Baker rubbed and stroked the president's feet for perhaps half an hour. The president smiled at the comfort of his dear friend. Here I witnessed a world leader who was serving a servant who had been our world's leader. And what came to mind was Jesus.
The 94-year-old served his country as president, vice president, World War II veteran, and even CIA director. He guided the U.S. through the Gulf War and the breakup of the Soviet Union.
He stood in the breach against tyranny and discrimination. And on his watch, a wall fell in Berlin. A dictator's aggression did not stand.
But one of his proudest moments was that of a husband and a father. Married more than 7 decades to Barbara, their marriage would bring 6 children, including George, who followed in Dad's footsteps as the country's 43rd president.
A great and noble man, the best father a son or daughter could have. And in our grief, let us smile knowing that Dad is hugging Robin and holding Mom's hand again.
Now, former President Bush is only the 19th person to receive a state funeral. His casket is now in Houston, Texas for a service. He will be buried next to his wife, Barbara, and his daughter, Robin, who died at just 3 years old. Ben Kennedy, CBN News, the White House.
And we are joined now by senior Washington correspondent Jennifer Wishon and chief political analyst David Brody. David and Jennifer, I'd like to get both of your biggest takeaways from this moving ceremony. Jennifer, let's start with you.
Well, there's so much to unpack. I mean, what a beautiful, moving tribute to this man who has meant so much to our country. I think for me, you know, just remembering that this man had such a zest for life. that he was funny. Sometimes we don't think about the president as being funny, but that he loved a good joke, and what a good friend he was. I mean, you see someone like Alan Simpson, who, you know, when he was at his lowest low politically, having the president inviting him to Camp David, you know, being seen with him publicly, it just really gives us a fuller picture of who this man was.
What about you, David?
Yeah, it's kind of like all of a sudden we're in this crazy, you know, Trumposphere, if you will, of craziness, and then all of a sudden we have a day like today, which just feels like not just a flashback, but just like a pause. And it feels nice to take a breath. And so George H.W. Bush, that's part of his legacy for all of us, to take a deep breath, inhale, and then exhale, and just realize that civility does need to rule the day at the end, but it's not easy. Yeah, it's not easy at all.
That was going to be my next question. Like, what is the legacy of George H.W. Bush? We've heard civility, we've heard foreign policy. What are your thoughts on that?
In a lot of ways, I think, you know, playing off that, his decency. He was a decent man. And, you know, I think we saw him rely on his faith publicly. I mean, this is a man who, every time he faced hardships, whether it was the death of his 3-year-old little girl, can you imagine going through something like that? Whether it was losing to Bill Clinton, which was a tremendous loss for him, but we saw him rely on his faith and also rally. And I think it's a great lesson. You know, we look at these issues on college campuses where there are free speech issues, that people don't know how to face adversity. Well, he's a perfect example of how you do that and how you can do that with grace. He's a man who was, you know, throughout his public and also in his private life, he was exhibiting the fruits of the Spirit. And his family is going to carry that on. And it's just such a beautiful legacy.
Yeah. And what about his policy? David, he's largely known for his international policy, especially when it comes to the Cold War, Iraq, Panama.
Right, Operation Desert Storm. I mean, that is first and foremost. It was a victory, and let me change that. It was a solid victory, all bold, as I like to say, 24 font. You know, I'd always do that. But it's true, and that's the #1 legacy of George H.W. Bush. That's it. Everything else we can talk about afterwards. But on domestic policy, obviously, the American Civil Disabilities Act was a big one. The Clean Air Act was another one. And of course, unfortunately for him, as we talked in the funeral today, it was a punch in the gut, I think. I think it was Alan Simpson who said he balanced the budget but received a punch in the gut because he did raise taxes when he said he wouldn't raise taxes. He knew it would hurt him politically. He did it anyhow. That's courage.
And that brings me to my next question is, will we see that again? There was a lot of talk about during that time. It was looked at as a bad decision and the bad move to raise Texas after saying, read my lips. But you almost hear like a pining for that moderate voice, that pining for that let's come together and be bipartisan, at least throughout the funeral service. Does that carry on?
Well, I actually think it really could, and I'll just give you a quick illustration. Donald Trump and immigration and the Democrats right now. I mean, Donald Trump is willing to codify, I keep saying this all the time, he's willing to codify DACA into law. Obama never codified it into law, though we wanted to. But the point is, Trump's willing to do that against his base, against the deplorable base that's out there that will be upset that he's doing this. But he's willing to do it. The Democrats won't do it. Why? Border wall funding. They won't give him a dime, or maybe, $1.6 billion, which is nothing. So basically, there is an opportunity to come together. I don't think it's so much moderate voices. I think it's entrenchment on both sides. That's the real issue.
Now, you know, something that a lot of people are talking about is the moment that President Trump walked into the cathedral. What did you make of that, Jennifer? We saw him sit down, shake hands with the Obamas, but that was it. He's picking up some flack for that. What are your thoughts?
Well, if I was advising the president, I would have said, okay, Mr. President, this is what you can expect when you walk out. Hillary Clinton is going to be the first person on the row. If you want to shake her hand, you need to do that immediately. I would have had him go down the row and shake the hands of every man and woman sitting there, including both Clintons. He didn't do that. He reached over to shake hands with Obama. Bill Clinton, did he look at the president? Quickly. He might have looked quickly, but there wasn't really an opportunity. Bill Clinton didn't extend his hand. Trump didn't. Maybe he didn't want to be rude and reach over the Obamas. We don't know. But this is going to be analyzed as we're analyzing it. But again, I think that it's always a good idea to kill your enemies with kindness. And so again, I really think it was a missed opportunity.
Well, and civility is a two-way street, okay? Everybody's going to talk about Trump. Well, Hillary had the icy stare as well and didn't even make eye contact with President Trump. And oh, by the way, back to President Trump. How about walking across and shaking Hillary's hand? Okay, but also, how about over to Jeb Bush? Low-energy Jeb. who's going through a tough time right now with his father. How about a quick, so I mean, look, these state funerals are opportunities for moments of civility and moments that, you know, are going to be etched in our memories for a very long time that you can build off of that momentum-wise. So I think there were some opportunities missed today.
I think the one thing history always shows us is that we don't know everything going on behind the scenes. So we have no idea what kind of handshaking and kumbaya moments were happening behind the scene. And me being the optimist, I'm hoping that that is exactly what was happening,
well, if
or what's going to happen throughout the week.
If there's something behind the scenes, let me know between Hillary and Trump, okay? All right, that'd be breaking news.
Maybe
they're 20 years from now.
They're agreeing they don't want to be a civil, right? That's an agreement there.
So Jennifer, David, thank you so much as always for your insight.